Welcome to another episode of Financial Freedom with Tom Hegna, where I introduce to you some of the top financial professionals from around the country, and I'm talking Main Street, not Wall Street. I am super excited about our next guest. We have Parker Faulkner, who's a financial professional out of Springfield, Missouri. So welcome, Parker.
Hey, thank you, Tom. And Tom, this is a dream come true for me to be here with you. When I first saw you, you was on PBS. I never dreamed I'd get to actually sit down and have an interview with you. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I truly appreciate it. This is just another one of God's blessings that I get to do this.
Well, thank you, Parker. So, hey, I know a little bit about you, but our audience doesn't. So how did you get involved in the financial services business?
Well, I tell you what, Tom, it goes back to the way I was raised. I was blessed to be raised by a wonderful man. My father, he had to quit school in the 4th grade to help support his family. We grew up in southeast Missouri, down in cotton fields, and my father, very successful with a 4th grade education, the smartest man I know. And he gave me a garden hoe when I was 8 years old and put me in the cotton field to chop the weeds out. And so I learned how to work hard at a very early age. And Tom, I've taken that into whatever I've decided to do. And I've brought that to my personal practice where we help people retire happy. And my mother, very blessed, mother raised us in a Christian home. I tell people I had a drug problem growing up. So Mama drugged me to church, and I'm thankful she did. So the way my parents raised me, Tom, that helped me get where I'm at today, and so thankful. I was able to tell my father, I said, Dad, I'll never pay you back for everything you did for me. He said, you paid me by being my boy. So I'll never be able to pay my parents back for what they did for me, and so blessed. So.
Yeah, I think a work ethic is one of the best gifts a person can have, and it's hard to instill that in children. But I've got 4 kids, and that's what we've tried to do is instill that work ethic in them, because that can cover a lot of things. So look, when you're sitting down with retirees, they got a lot of worries, but they probably got one number one concern. What's in your experience the number one concern?
Tom, the number one concern of retirees is running out of money before they run out of life. That is a really major concern. And of course, thank goodness we've got planning to show them how we can take care of that for them. So you asked me the number one concern, that's it.
And so how do you help them with that? What can you put into place that will make sure they will never run out of money? Because there are products that'll do that.
Exactly. Tom, people today, they retire with what? 401ks, 403bs, thrift savings plans, but they don't start out with that solid foundation that their parents had, in retirement. The parents, what did their parents get? They worked 30, 35 years at a company to get a gold watch, and then they get a pension, a guaranteed stream of income. Well, today, that's turned around. Your retirement plan is not your parents' retirement plan. So we help those retirees take assets from their IRAs, their 401ks, their 403bs, and turn them into guaranteed income to go along with their Social Security. And if they're fortunate enough to have a pension, I think, 16% of Americans have pensions today?
I think it's about 9%.
And most of them are federal employees.
Right.
Tom, I like to tell a story in my seminar. In my seminar, I've got a slide of pyramids. One's right side up, the other one's upside down. Basically, explaining the difference in retirement planning today to what it was for their parents. So the story I like to tell is, there was this gentleman, he was at work one day and his wife called him up. And it was around Christmas time. She said, honey, would you go to the store and pick out the Christmas ham for us? Well, she's never let him do that before. So he just was smiling and grinning. He went to the store, spent 30 minutes, picked out the nicest ham at the store. Took it home to his wife, so proud of himself. And wouldn't you know, Tom, it didn't suit her. She said, honey, you did not get the end of the ham cut off. He said, well, you didn't tell me to do that. She said, I thought you knew we always get the end of the ham cut off. He said, no, I didn't know that. Why do we do that? Legitimate question. She said, well, I do it because my mother did it. Well, I want you to call your mother right now and ask her why she did that. So they called Mom. Mom, why did you cut the end of the ham off? She said, I did it because my mama did it. The husband said, okay, we're going to solve this third generation mystery right now. Call your grandma. Ask her why she did that. So they called Grandma. Grandma, why did you always cut the end of the ham off? Grandma said, I did that because my roasting pan was too small. Well, Tom, roasting pans are bigger today. They don't have to cut the end of the ham off. Same thing with retirement planning. Retirement planning has changed, but there's tools out there. There's roasting pans big enough to get them those guaranteed incomes that they need.
And it's so important, I think. You know, my first book was Paychecks and Playchecks. And I always tell people, retirement's all about spending money. You know, they think it's about saving. No, retirement's about spending money, but a lot of people have trouble spending money. And that's when, if they can get those paychecks and playchecks, it's a little easier for them to spend the money. So, like, tell me about your client base. Where do you find your clients? What does your typical client look like? And what type of client you like to have? Kind of give me a little bit about your client base.
Yeah, ideally, Tom, we'd love to get clients maybe 5 years before they retire, you know, because as you well know, a loss during that time period could devastate their retirement income planning. You know, 5 years before retirement, 5 years after. That's the ideal time because, again, we don't want them to have those biggest losses. That's the retirement red zone, where a major loss, either 5 years early or 5 years after, can really devastate your retirement income. Think about those clients that retired in 2008. And I got to sit down with some of those clients. Now, they weren't my clients. They were in Wall Street firms, and they lost 37%. Someone retired in 2008, lost 37% the first year retired. A lot of them had to go back to work, you know, and so we want to avoid that.
Now, you've got a process, I think a 5-step process that you take clients through. Kind of walk me through that.
Okay, again, the first thing is just like building a house. What do you do when you build a house?
Got to have a foundation.
Got to have a foundation. And you want that foundation rock solid. And so we want to make sure we've got enough guaranteed income to cover the needs and the wants. And there's 2 questions that I ask my clients in my seminars. The first question is, what do you need your money to do? Now, we're talking about in retirement. You've already left the job. No longer are you getting a paycheck. What do you need your money to do? And I let them respond to me. What do you think the answer I get most of the time?
You got to cover all their living expenses.
Well, but they don't think that. You know what they're thinking? I need to grow my money.
Oh, yeah.
I said, you're in retirement now. What has stopped? You no longer have a guaranteed paycheck. I said, you know, the gas company, the electric company, the phone company, the insurance companies, they don't care that you're retired.
Right.
Those bills are still coming in. So what you need is enough guaranteed income to cover all your basic monthly living expenses. When you do that one thing, that just kind of, you know, relieves things. You know, you don't have that money in the market. You can't get guaranteed income in the stock market. Now, we don't hate the market. We use it too. But the purpose of money dictates where it should be invested. And your income funds, the last place it needs to be is the stock market. It's got to be guaranteed. And then we want to make sure we maximize their Social Security. And then if they're fortunate enough to have a pension, then we want to make sure, you know, all their income assets are doing what they need it to do. The next question, what do you want your money to do?
Right.
I mean, good Lord. I mean, I love having fun. I'm having so much fun with my grandkids right now, Tom. I tell you what, if I knew grandkids were going to be so special, I'd have had them first. You know, and I've been a lot nicer to their parents, you know. But I'm just having so much fun with my grandbabies, traveling with them, and I want to do it while I'm healthy. I encourage them to do the same things, you know, because basically there's 3 phases of retirement: the go-go years, the slow-go years, and then the no-go years. Now, the go-go years, this is when you are you are on a honeymoon with your retirement. I call it retirement honeymoon stage. You want to get the RV. You want to get the cruise tickets. You want the plane tickets. You want to go see the grandkids. You want to go, go, go. Then the next phase is the slow go years. Now, during the slow go years, you could do the same thing you could do in the go go years. You just don't want to do them no more. Right. Matter of fact, you go out to have dinner at 5 o'clock because old dad, he can't see at night to drive back home. And then the third phase is the no-go years. And this is when you're not going somewhere until you go somewhere. So we encourage our clients to get some of those funds. Let's start enjoying them during the go-go years. Tom, my grandmother, she stayed in her go-go years until she was 85 years old. Could you imagine that? Wow. On her 85th birthday, she decided to get 3 of her best friends, and she wanted to take a trip across the United States. So that day came along, her birthday came up, and grandmother got her 3 best friends, and they loaded up in her 1975 model gold Lincoln Continental. I mean, this car was as long as a football field. And so they loaded up, and they've been gone about 3 days. And Grandma got pulled over by a state trooper. So the state trooper walks up to my grandmother's window. She rolls the window down. She said, "Can I help you, Sonny?" He said, "Ma'am, you realize you're on the interstate?" "Oh yeah, Sonny, me and my 3 best friends, we're having the best time of our lives. We're traveling across the United States." He said, "Well, ma'am, do you realize you're going 15 miles an hour on the interstate?" She said, "Well, Sonny, I saw a sign back there that said 15. He said, "Ma'am, you're on Interstate 15. And so the trooper looks in the car at my grandmother's 3 best friends, and they are froze. I mean, not moving a muscle, looking dead ahead, not saying anything. Looked like they'd seen a ghost. The trooper says, "Ladies, are y'all okay?" My grandmother's best friend's in the passenger seat. She said, "Yes, sir, we're okay." He said, "Well, what is wrong? Looked like you saw a ghost." She said, "Well, sir, we just got off of Interstate 95. So, you know, it's nice to stay in those go-go years as long as you can. I don't know if you can do it till 85 like Grandma did, but getting back to our 5-step planning process, the first step, again, guaranteed income. And we want you to enjoy it. You know, enjoy that retirement. You work hard for it. Second thing, Tom, once we have the income covered, now is when we want to grow those assets. And this is when we're going to use the market. The difference is we're going to have a floor on our investments. Our income has a floor of 0. That means we're not going to give anything back to the market. Our growth accounts, we have a floor. It depends on the client of how aggressive they want to be. Our conservative model is a 6.5% stop loss. Our aggressive is 15%. We don't want to give back those gains to the market because, you know, you're older now and you may not have time to recoup those losses. So we got the income covered. Now we're growing to stay ahead of inflation. Next thing, what's money to do you any good if you can't get your hands on it? So we want to have sufficient liquidity where we've got access to those funds and we can go do whatever it is we wish to do. And then the fourth thing is we definitely don't like sending money to the IRS. I hadn't met anybody who likes to do that yet. Neither do I. So we want to make sure we're tax efficient with our plan. And then the fifth thing is if you want to leave a legacy to the kids, we'll show you how to do that. But again, I encourage my clients to fly first class because those kids are going to.
So now retirement's changed over generations. I think this is part of that, the pyramid and then the reverse pyramid. Do you want to go a little deeper into that?
Yeah, again, you know, what did your parents' foundation start with?
Pension.
Pension, guaranteed income. Next thing, Social Security. Those are guaranteed, right? Now, some people think Social Security is not going to be here, but Tom, it's going to be here. It's going to be here. What I tell my clients is what's going to happen is the money they're sending you is going to continue doing less and less, but it's going to be here. And then that third top of the pyramid of your parents' retirement, they could take that money, they could go buy the stock, they could go buy the mutual funds. Because guess what? If they lost all of that, their lifestyle wasn't going to change, okay? Because they had the income guaranteed and secured. Their company did it for them, though. Now, let's shift it. That pyramid gets upside down. Now, on the bottom side is a pension. Not many people have that, you know. Then Social Security. And Tom, there's so many benefits within Social Security that people aren't aware of. We help a lot of people get spousal benefits, even from spouses they're no longer married to. They're not aware those benefits exist out there. And then the top of the pyramid in today's retirement is the 401ks, the IRAs, the 403bs, the thrift savings plan. Again, we got to take those funds, we got to take a percentage of those, we got to put a percentage of those for the foundation for income, then we take a percentage of those and put them in our growth models with those built-in stop losses. Now we got a secure, happy retirement.
So if somebody's got their you know, what they need their money to do, what they want their money to do in retirement, then what? What do you do after that?
Well, you know, we have a report that we do for every one of our clients. It's called a structured income plan. I love this. It's one single page. I'm simple. Again, my first job was carrying a garden hoe through a cotton patch. We want to keep things simple for our clients, okay? So on one side of this, we've got all their investable assets. On the other side, we've got all their income, okay? We can actually see into their future. We can look out 40 years into their future with this plan. We can show them what their future required minimum distributions are going to be. Then we've got an account that says accounts total. Now, I tell them, this is what the kids are going to get. Tom, you'd be shocked when they see that number. I don't want to leave the kids that much money. I said, well, then you either got to start spending more or you got to start giving more. And, you know, again, with the Secure Act, what's changed with IRAs when you pass those on to the kid or a non-spousal beneficiary. If a non-spouse beneficiary gets an IRA today, they've got to spend that down in 10 years. And what do you think taxes are going to do, Tom?
They're going to have to go up.
So when your kids inherit your IRA, the one you worked so hard for, guess who's going to get more of that money?
Uncle Sugar.
Exactly. Even if you don't like your kids, you'd much rather them get the money instead of the IRS. And so I've got a plan we came up with. It's called a required minimum distribution offset. I show them that and they start taking those distributions sooner. About every client I show it to, they say, well, we need to start taking these distributions now. Yeah. And if they don't want to spend them, Tom, they can take those funds, move them to a Roth, give it, whatever they want to do. So it all depends on the client.
Yeah, it's funny because clients don't like to pay taxes. So they say, well, I'm going to leave my IRA to the kids. That is the worst money to leave to the kids. They're going to get hammered with that money. So now with these RMDs, we talked about it, and that's changed. It was 70.5, and then 72, 73. They're going to, I think, maybe change it to 75 eventually. Kind of go through the go, slow, go, no go. Where does the RMD fit in there? What advice do you give them?
Okay, so what we want to do, once we show them what those RMDs are. So for example, at my age, I was born in 62, so my required minimum distribution age is 75. So I can show someone at 75, 80, and they look at how much they have to start taking, and they realize, you know, can I enjoy that money more now at 62? Or will I enjoy it more at 75 or 80? Well, Tom, I tell you what, traveling is exhausting. You know, I come out here, I had to drive to the airport, park my car, had to get on a plane, get off that plane, get on another plane, get a car, drive in New York City. I tell you what, a country boy in New York City, I got about as much business in New York City as a porcupine. But anyway, and had to drive here, spend the night in a hotel, and to sit down with you. And so when do you think you're going to enjoy traveling? When you're younger or when you're older? So I tell them, listen, you've got to start spending this money. You have no choice. Let's start doing it now. So what we do with that, we set that money up in guaranteed income that'll never, ever run out. It's guaranteed to them for the rest of their life. Then we also address long-term care. Those benefits, those income benefits are either going to double or they're going to go up an additional 50% to help offset long-term care expenses should they need it in the future. And guess what, Tom? They can stay in their own home. They don't have to go to the nursing home.
You know, two things I always tell people. Number one, you're not getting any younger. And number two, you don't get to take any of it with you. And if you would think on that, you're not getting any younger. You don't get to take any of it with you. Now is the time to start spending some of that money.
Exactly.
You know, you saved it for retirement. That's the other thing about an IRA. Individual retirement account, you save that money for your retirement. You're in retirement. You're supposed to spend that money, and retirement's all about spending money. So what's unique about you compared to other advisors? Kind of give me, what do you do?
Okay, the unique thing, Tom, again, is getting them to shift their focus away from growth to income. You know, I've got them big blue letters, this color blue, on my office wall. Income is the outcome that matters. And so we get them to shift their thinking. You know, he's right. We need to start taking income from this. Why did we save this money? That's one unique thing. The second unique thing is how we grow those assets. How many advisors talk to clients about stop losses?
Not many.
Not many, do they? So we want to grow those assets, but we still want to protect them. You know, we're distribution advisors. That's what we focus on. The Wall Street guys and gals, they're great at what they do at accumulation. I will not take that away from them. But I've been blessed to have the best teachers, and Tom, you're one of those teachers that's taught me the most optimal way to retire. I'll give you an example on our growth accounts. You know, we've got that added protection. I like to show a picture of the Titanic in my seminars. So I got a picture of the Titanic, it pops up on the slide. So I asked the audience, I said, do y'all know where that ship is? And of course, everybody said, well, yeah, it's at the bottom of the Atlantic. I said, no, it's not. It's on Highway 76 in Branson, Missouri. I just saw it the other day. Well, at least the first half, the front half is. I said, well, we all know that's the Titanic, right? Well, in 1912, that ship set sail without enough lifeboats on board. No one cared because the public's general consensus was that ship was what,
Sinkable.
It can't sink, so who cares if there's enough lifeboats aboard the Titanic? You know the company that owned that ship, White Star Lines, they knew they had plenty of room on that ship for lifeboats for every single passenger, but they opted not to do it because they didn't want to clutter up the upper decks for those first-class passengers. Now, history tells us it would have been a wise thing to have enough lifeboats aboard that Titanic. I got to thinking, what if you had two Titanics sitting in harbor? Titanic 1 and Titanic 2. Both ships are identical. Both ships are going to leave the same place. They're going to arrive at the same place. They're going to leave the same time, arrive at the same time. The food's the same. The fare's the same. The living quarters is the same. The entertainment's the same. The only difference is Titanic 2 has enough lifeboats for every single passenger. Now, if it's not going to cost me any more for that added protection, which one would you take?
You're going to take the one with the lifeboats.
Well, exactly. Well, Tom, that's what we sell the financial waters with, is Titanic 2. Because you know what? We know we're going to hit turbulence in the water. We know we're going to hit an iceberg one day, and every single one of my clients are they're prepared for that. And we got the lifeboats to keep them from drowning and freezing to death.
Now, Parker, your clients, they've got the income coming in. I agree, they need to spend more money, and now they're spending it, but they still want to leave a legacy to their kids. So how can they kind of have their cake and eat it too?
Okay, Tom, what I tell them, you know, if you want to leave money to the kids, I'll ask them a question. How much money do you want to leave the kids? You'd be surprised if people say, well, no one's ever asked us that. Of course, sometimes I get an answer, well, we want to leave them what's left. But then sometimes I'll get an answer, I'll get a dollar figure from them. The best way to leave money to the kids is for the mom and dad to purchase a second to die life insurance policy. You take pennies on the dollar now, you purchase that life insurance. When the second spouse passes away, all that money goes to the kids tax-free. And guess what that lets mom and dad do?
Spend the rest.
Spend the rest of it.
Right.
Have fun. That's how we leave a legacy.
And Parker, as you know, I've done that. So I got 4 kids, and one day we're sitting around saying, how much we leave the kids? My wife said, I don't know, what do you think? I said, well, if we bought a $1 million second to die life insurance policy, name the 4 kids a beneficiary, when we're both gone, they'll get $1 million tax-free. Well, we did that. That policy's completely paid up. That $1 million policy cost us a total of $150,000. So for 15 cents on the dollar, we get to transfer $1 million tax-free to our kids. But the best part is that other $850,000 we get to spend.
That's good.
And so, you know, we're doing exactly what you're recommending to your clients. So, Parker, this has been great. Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Tom, they can call my office number direct if they want to. Most of the time, you're going to get a young lady named Rachel. She's great. But our office number is 417-355-8700. They can email me directly if they want to, and that's Parker@retirehappynetwork.com. Our website is retirehappynetwork.com. And that's the name of our little company, Retire Happy Network. And that's what we do. We help people retire happy.
Well, that is great. So, Parker, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Tom, for having me. And again, this has been a blessing. Thank you so much.